moments to introduce yourself.
Good morning, everybody. I am Bethany. I am based out of Valdosta, good old Valdosta, welcome. I am a birth doula, a birth assistant, also a birth photographer, a breastfeeding specialist. I'm a student wife here in this lovely state of Georgia.
Good morning, my name is Dr. Joy Baker. I'm an OBGYN. I'm based in Grange, Georgia, and very happy to be here with you guys today.
My name is Keisha. I'm a traditional midwife, community midwife, serving the metro Atlanta area. I'm based out of Jonesboro. I'm also the founder and director of the Atlanta Doula Collective, an author, a mother, and just all things birth.
Sekesa.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Sterling Grace Simmons. I am a certified breastfeeding specialist and a full spectrum doula. Like Sekesa, I too am an author. I am a mother of 3 children, and I service the entire metro Atlanta area in person, but I serve everywhere else virtually.
Good morning. My name is Victoria Gordon. I am a certified nurse midwife. I also teach at Valdosta State University in the nursing program, so I do a lot of undergrad and graduate, mostly OB, but I also dabble in professional development, community health. I own a practice here based out of Valdosta, independent practice, so we service about 50 miles around Valdosta. Advocacy, I do a lot of advocacy work in terms of just sort of talking about the statistics, and I know Dr. Joy Baker from the Georgia Department of Public Health aid bundles, and so I do a little bit of everything. Thanks for having us.
Now, as you can see, we have a little bit of everything from midwives to OBGYNs to doula, lactation consultant, and the beautiful thing of having a holistic approach is being able to serve our Black birthing parents and being able to support them. How do you think that we all work together to be able to refer to one another, to make sure that our Black mothers feel safe and being able to get all of their needs met, and also reduce some of those statistics that we have in the state of Georgia? I know, right? Where do we start?
I'll take that. That's an excellent question, because that's actually an issue in the way in my area. So because I am a community midwife, and the way that Georgia views midwives that do home birth, it creates a barrier. So I have moms, I just did a consult yesterday with a mom, and she was like, well, do you have any pediatricians or any obstetricians that you work alongside? But that's a barrier, because they don't work alongside us. They don't recognize us as being healthcare providers because of the laws here in Georgia and how they govern home birth midwifery. So that is definitely a barrier. I think that my referral network is what is considered to be alternative, which really is traditional care, which would be chiropractors, reflexologists, lactation work specialists, people that actually honor working alongside home birth and community midwives.
Could you say the question one more time?
It was really long.
Being that we all participate in every single facet of maternal health, how do you think that we can be able to refer to one another so that we can help our Black mothers feel safe and being able to be referred and feel as if it's a comfortable experience?
So how? So I think right now, to sort of speak to your point, the way collaborative care works and doesn't work sort of depends on the climate of the region that you're in, right? So I know that Atlanta is probably a little bit more friendly to home birth than South Georgia is, depending on the type of provider that you are, right? So there's a lot of education that needs to happen around the different disciplines and understanding what the different disciplines actually do. So I think that, first there needs to be some education about what a doula actually does, what the different types of midwifery, the different types of midwifery, because there are different types of midwifery providers. Each one is licensed and trained just a little bit differently, and our education and background is a little bit different. So being familiar with all of the different specialties are, and I think that there's specialties even in OB, and there's specialties even in high-risk perinatology, and so just sort of understanding what all the key players are, I think is first and foremost really important. And so I think in order to build a more collaborative environment here in Georgia, no matter what the region is, there just needs to be a lot of education and exposure to what all the different disciplines do and what they are.
I think that's such a good point, Victoria, because I am, if you guys have ever heard of Milledgeville, Georgia, I'm from the South, and there were several people that I would have never heard of a doula, don't know what the midwife does exactly, may go to their OBGYN, don't know what they are free to ask for or speak up about. So I think like that education piece is so important, so that they can know like this is what you get whenever you go to see a lactation specialist, or this is how a doula can be able to support you, so that they can be able to have all of their needs being met, and they don't have to figure it out on their own, or they don't have to suffer in silence. And it's so important that we do this work together, so that we're also able to like, hey, Sterling, I have someone that's perfect that needs your support. I'm gonna do a warm pass off over to you, and they can have everything that they need. Now, being that with Dr. Baker and Victoria, with midwives and OBs, how do you have those conversations with moms so that they can know which one fits better for them, or how they can have support? How do you guys provide that education? Because a lot of people don't know the difference between midwives and OBs. So how do you guys support that, especially in more rural Georgia areas?
So, I think that what Victoria said is absolutely true. Education is absolutely key to help. Hold it up. Guys, hear me?
Yeah, hold it up to your face more.
You gotta hold it closer.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Right there.
But I think it's so important that we provide education so that moms and birthing folks know exactly what it is. They know what it is they need, but they may not understand which provider is actually able to provide that for them. So the education is really key. So in my clinic, I talk a lot about, that hey, you might be interested in having a doula. And actually in the range we do have one doula. So kind of excited. Give them a card and say, I really think you would benefit from the additional support and education. And then, if they're having trouble with breastfeeding, or they've had trouble in the past, they want to get to know some tips and tricks on how to do this the next time in a little bit better way. I might say, hey, we have a lactation consultant. Why don't we set up a consult with that person outpatient? So it really is about education. It's about paying attention. And I think to your last question about collaboration, regardless of if it's a certified midwife or certified nurse midwife or certified professional midwife, you kind of have to know who's in your area, how you can best work with them, and make sure that you are giving those opportunities to people that you're serving. Because a lot of times what I see is that people are not too aware. All OBs are terrified. You should just probably know that of being sued if something goes wrong. So they are always kind of like, I don't know about this home birth thing, and I don't know about, holistic care, because what if something goes wrong, then I'm on the hook for it. So I think that we also have to advocate for, legislation that brings everybody to the table and not leaving some people out here
really good, you gotta really put this up to your face. Really good point about knowing who's in your area, right? Because every area doesn't have the same resources and the same sort of providers in that area. So like, I don't think I have any in Valdosta right now, any community midwives or traditional midwives, not that I've seen or heard. So just sort of understanding and being able to provide to really just our clients and the people that we serve, like this is what we have. So we, at my organization, are really careful about making sure that our patients and our clients understand what it is that we do, and they understand who we work with for different things. And so we have a maternal fetal medicine specialist that we refer patients that are a little bit more moderate to high risk just for an evaluation and a consultation. We also have, we have several OBGYNs here in Valdosta and the local areas, but it is very difficult getting them care with them when they need it, which is really sad because everybody is terrified of home birth. And even if this patient isn't a home birth client, saying to them, I need to transfer her to you is a barrier. And so one of the things that is sad, but in our collaboration here, just because of the difficulties with the legal barriers and just with the locality and the political climate here, we have to tell people when we send them, don't tell them that she came from me. I give them all of their records, but they won't be seen if I tell them that they came from them. Regardless of how much care I've given, how many ultrasounds I've done, how much labs I've done, and I have a legitimate reason for sending her out of my care because she now is outside of my scope, right? And so a lot of collaboration is understanding where your scope is and saying, hey, this is outside of my scope, and I'm sure you do a similar thing. Like we have a risk stratification, and it's, well, this is not something that I can treat. This is even something I can manage independently. You need to see somebody else. And so knowing where that line is and communicating that is essential to your education with your patients and your clients, and it's essential for safety. We're all trying to have healthy moms and healthy babies, and so I think getting to that part in the relationship in your communities and saying, we're all on the same page here. We're all trying to have healthy moms and healthy babies. So collaboration here, it does not happen really well between our hospital systems and the community environments. However, we have great collaboration with members in the community that are actually doing community work. So like our primary care physicians, our doulas, there are several doulas here, all of which are amazing. We have a couple of lactation specialists. I know Bethany, you do a lot of lactation as well. And so our primary care physicians, our chiropractor offices, my pelvic, my PT people, we have a really, actually, our pediatricians, we have a really deep network of referrals that work well within the community. And so part of the collaboration issue we're having is just getting people from the community into the higher level of care where they need to be, and it's simply just a relationship issue. So I think a lot of it is just political.
I absolutely agree. I think that, for me at LaGrange, we have a certified professional midwife that works in my area. And, we've been able to collaborate really well. So I see every single one of her patients. And, just for a brief, general consultation, their ultrasound, if their labs, if those patients start to fit to risk out of home birth, then they can be transferred. So I will take them, and we work very well together. And she has protocols that she follows, and I have a copy of all her clinical protocols. And so if there's a question, if there's a problem, if there's an issue, she's going to call me. She's going to reach out. And that works really well for us. And not only does it help provide patients with a better or safer prenatal care, but it also keeps me safe. Because I know who these people are, and I know they're planning to birth outside of the hospital. And should they need, come in for some reason, I already know them. I already have a record. I already have their prenatal lab. We already have it, so we can actually do a handoff. And obviously I can't do everything as one person, but even our labor service knows that, hey, these are some folks that may be coming in for a final birth. So it's really important to have that collaboration. But I think there's just a lot of fear surrounding it. And the fear is that,
We didn't hear the last part, Dr.
Oh, I was that's not what it's Hello? No, I was saying, I'm not sure y'all can hear me. But I was saying that planned home birth, awesome. I was saying that planned home birth for the appropriate patient, who, is not at a high risk, is actually quite safe.
Okay. Now, what about you other three ladies, Sterling, Bethany, and Keisha? How do you guys, like in us talking about that fear, how do you work with the moms that you have in helping them either get additional support or helping them work through any type of fear of giving birth? I know for me, whenever I work with any type of moms and they're fearful, am I gonna live after I have the baby? I have anxiety, I'm bringing this child into the world of this country in which it is right now. Or if I have any moms that may have a scheduled C-section, have an older child in the home, and has absolutely no support, and I'll definitely refer them to a doula so they can have one, a postpartum doula, or figuring out a support plan. Or if they have anxiety about being able to produce milk, and really, very, very focused on breastfeeding, and referring them to a lactation specialist. How do you guys provide that support and helping them with that fear, and also building your own network of referrals?
Yeah, okay, there we go. I would say, just kind of repeat what I said earlier, the referral network is actually not that great in Atlanta. What you all are describing is ideal. We do not have access to that. The one OB that was publicly backing home birth midwives is no longer practicing. As a matter of fact, the other two CNMs that would also provide collaborative care alongside some of us midwives retired this year. Another OB, Dr. Sanika, is retired and she won't be working next year. So we don't have any OB referrals that we can utilize. CNMs, I don't know any of them that run their own practice in Metro Atlanta. There are none. The only two that were have recently retired. So that is a strong barrier. People that find me are well informed. People that find me are afraid of the hospital. And so the only time fear comes up is if I have to transport. That's a whole scene. If I have to, we're no longer safe for home, something is showing up that's outside of my scope, and I say we need to go in, that's when you see a whole temper tantrum and a fear breakdown. But beyond that, my families, I'm just fortunate in that way. Everybody does not, I think it's a certain mindset that actively seeks out home birth. And then there are people that find home birth nowadays because, again, they're just terrified to go to the hospital. Those are the calls I get. I don't want to die in the hospital. Can you please take another, client this month? But again, as I mentioned earlier, my network of lactation professionals and pelvic floor therapists, we actually are fortunate to have one on our team. Chiropractors, massage therapists, the Atlanta Doula Collective, shameless plug. Our network is really strong in that regard when it comes to, again, alternative care, which I like to consider is traditional care. It's nowadays looked at alternatively. But other than that, the alternative network is pretty solid for home birth midwives in Georgia. Pediatricians, we have more pediatricians on board with home birth than obstetricians, and it does come down to the litigation because they're terrified. Even the couples that did support us said to do it privately. Don't tell nobody that I'm supporting this home birth situation. Just, if you have to transport in, tell the client, they don't even want to say, I was trying to do a home birth, come in and just say, I was laboring at home and this is what happened. Like you mentioned, there's no collaborative care. You can send over your records, even though I use a HIPAA compliant platform where I can actually just transfer digitally the records online. I don't have that option. So they have to kind of walk in blindsided, and prayerfully they'll let a doula come in, where I can disguise myself as a doula and continue with their care in that hospital setting. So it's kind of.
Which is kind of like ridiculous, right?
It's ridiculous.
That you have to go through all of that. Yeah. And it shouldn't be that way. But it's like we have to navigate just to be able to better serve the parent.
It also looks, for me as a lactation professional, so So I love that I am in Metro Atlanta where I can connect with doulas from the Atlanta Doula Collective as well as other doula organizations and other doulas where they'll say, hey Sterling, I have this person and I know a little bit about breastfeeding and I thought I could help them, but ooh, I'm really not sure what's going on with this one. Can I send her your information? And that is where a lot of my referrals come from. They come from people that are actually boots on the ground doing the work in the beginning, the midwives and the doulas, where I'm fortunate enough to have connections with local midwives to where they'll call me and tell me about, hey, I had this mom give birth last night. I got the baby on the boob, but she's kind of got questions. So I just told her, go on and call Sterling and make sure she can come see you. So I am able to also refer, like she said, we have a great network of pediatricians in Atlanta. And I can say, hey, you know, this is who, I'm very big on interviewing your pediatrician.
Yeah.
That is a big part of what I teach my clients because that's the one person who probably has the quickest way to kind of derail your breastfeeding journey is if they're very ill prepared on breastfeeding knowledge. I tell people a lot of pediatricians only have about 3 hours of breastfeeding education. So if you went to a mechanic and they had a big sign out that said, hey, I got 3 hours on how to fix your car. Your engine could be about to fall out and you're going to bag your car, but I'm going to take my car somewhere. So it's the same thing. You want to make sure that you're taking your child to a knowledgeable pediatrician who understands breastfeeding, who knows, hey, breastfed babies have 2 weeks to get back to birth weight, so they're not telling you, hey, you got to do formula, you have to do all this type of stuff. So in order for me to best do my job in supporting my clients, yes, I can come in and I can weigh in and all that type of stuff, but I can also give you a referral to a pediatrician who is going to support you. I can also give you a referral to a chiropractor. Let's say mama's, shoulders are in her ears and she hadn't been positioning correctly. So I can say, girl, go to the chiropractor, go get you a massage, and just kind of collaborate that way.
That is, yeah, I see a lot of that and I hear about that. As a doula though, I need to point out like your question about that fear portion. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Hello. Good?
Bring it up a little more.
It's like
Yeah.
kissing the mic. Can you hear me good?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. But that fear part, I think, in my practice, my doula practice, I definitely combat that through education. I think all of us across the board agree that education is probably the biggest need when it comes to our birthing families. Like he was saying, we're fearful of not being able to breastfeed. Okay, great. Let's unpack that. What is that fear? Why are you fearing? Is it a past experience or is it somebody else's experience? Is it somebody telling you these things? What can you do? And then how do they learn? How do they learn? How do they best process information? That's important too. So knowing your patient, knowing your client, knowing how they learn, knowing their triggers, knowing their emotional state is just as important as knowing their medical state as well. So I think combating that fear really is a 2, 3, 4-fold question because it's not just I have to educate you, but I also have to educate you in a way that you're going to receive.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's a very personal thing that a lot of providers on our panel definitely have, but I think in the grand scheme, it's largely medical. It's largely, okay, what is wrong with you? Here's some information, fix it. And I think that we kind of get back to knowing who our clients are, knowing them on a more personal level, we're able to have more effective education that's going to really make a difference.
Awesome. The other thing to kind of piggyback about how you guys, when you deal with any of your clients, have to sometimes navigate in a certain way if they have to go into the hospital, if they have to be referred unfairly, but you're doing what you have to do to better serve that parent. And in a way, there is an empowerment to it because you're not allowing some of the barriers to hinder you to meet those needs. How do you empower your moms in the event that they may feel like they don't have a voice any of it, and they may feel like their symptoms aren't heard or are justified, because we do know, all of the statistics and whatnot. And I even had a client once who had told me, well, I know if I have these symptoms and I was to say something, it doesn't matter, so I'm not gonna say anything at all. And I was like, but you need to say something. And if you feel as if you can't say something, then that says a lot about your provider. You need to find someone else that you feel comfortable with. Well, the ones that you guys work with, how do you empower them so that they can really own this birth journey and they're not just feeling like they're existing or just a participant in it?
I'll answer that too quickly. I think the same thing, that education, that support, that humanizing support, but also giving them the tools. I'm pretty sure a lot of us are understand the brain, the benefits, the risk, the alternative, your intuition, what happens if we do nothing. I make sure that all of my clients know what that is, and we practice that. And I'm not above rolling in with them to an appointment and being their private patient advocate. And sitting there looking a bit mighty official, it seems to change some things in the room, just when they have somebody else there who the provider may not know who's this other person. Maybe let me be on my PCQ. So I think again, it's just finding how that person is able to advocate for themselves, and sometimes when people advocate for themselves, they do need a backup. They need just another body, need a body up, and being able to be that support for them as well.
I did doula work. I was a trained doula in 2006 to about 2016, so for about 10 years. And that's a great entry point into midwifery. If anybody's considering it, I think most midwifery schools not even require you to do doula work first. And the reason I bring that up is that informational piece, that informational support. Once you empower, the empowerment comes with the information. And that continues even now. I had a mom call me last night that was stressed about some cramping and something she had going on, some pelvic floor pressure. But just helping her to reduce her fears just by giving her information. And she said that. She was like, thank you so much. I feel so much better now. I feel more calm. I know I'm not in preterm labor. So the information is so empowering, I think, and it transcends into the midwifery world as well. I always tell my clients, I'm your accountability partner, right? Because sometimes they want to try to charge me with the process of safetyness and all the things of their journey. And yes, I am a part of that, but you have to also understand that you are very much accountable for your process. And I'm really here as an informational guide to help you make the best choices possible to get you to the goal that you want to have, whatever that, and again, as a doula, whatever that goal is, whether it was a home birth or a planned C-section or epidural, it doesn't matter. I'm the informational guide to help you reach that destination.
Accountability partner.
What was the question?
How do you empower your client?
Okay, yes, okay. So I approach breastfeeding from a communal standpoint. So I don't think that it's fair for me to put all of the breastfeeding education and expectations on the mom. So when I teach breastfeeding, I want the partner there, I want your mother there, I want your grandmother there, I want your best friend who's gonna be there. I want everybody to learn how breastfeeding works. Because one, mom brain is very real, and so is pregnancy brain. So even if you think you read all the books and took all the classes, when that baby gets here, you might be like, okay, I don't know what I'm supposed to do now. So if your partner is educated and your mother is educated and your best friend is educated, they can say, hey girl, remember she told you, hold your breast like this, or remember she told you that the baby was gonna be cluster feeding, this is normal, this is normal. it's so easy to kind of get wrapped up in new motherhood that everything you thought you knew just goes out the window. So when I teach it from a communal standpoint and everybody is on the same page, I find that you're more likely to meet or even surpass your breastfeeding goals because everybody is there to support you, and you don't have that person in your ear saying, girl, I don't know why you just won't go get that baby some Similac,
Yes.
or you got grandma in your ear saying, put some cereal in that baby's bottle. And I'm a firm believer in when you know better, you do better.
Yes.
So if everybody in your network or in your circle is learning to do better, even if they never breastfed, even if they have no idea why you want to breastfeed, but hey, you took a class and you understand, I think that changes the roles and makes people more comfortable because they realize that it's not all on them.
Yes. I love that. I love the whole community, bring everybody into the table. This is the page that we're on. I need everybody to be on this page.
Yeah. So what I typically do, the clients that I typically get, the patients that I typically get are looking for an alternative to what they already know is there. They may not necessarily be interested in having an actual home birth, but they're looking for something else. So they've already decided that they have seen what is available and that's not what they feel like they need. And so the very first thing I do when I take any sort of client is I do a 1-hour consult right off the bat before we even get into anything. And I explain to them what I do, but I also spend a large amount of that time listening to what it is they need. So the consult is really not about me. I tell them this is about you. What is it that you feel like you need? What has been your experience? What are you feeling? And I actually have gotten into doing quite a bit of pre-conception and well woman type consults, and they're just looking for something different. They don't necessarily know what it is. They're figuring out that's different for every woman. Every woman is looking for something different. And so I take the time to make our conversations be more about what it is that they need. A lot of times it's just they need a sense of autonomy. So they're looking for the right. I've heard people say the right to make their own decisions about what it is that they want. Many times they're looking for just more information. Sometimes they are looking for a community-based birth, and some of the patients that I have are looking for a hospital birth. And so a lot of them want something different, and they're looking for support. So I spend the time listening to them, and I think, one, listening to them makes them feel like they have more say over what happens, so they do feel more empowered. And then the model of care that I use really puts the woman at the helm of the care that she's receiving. So nothing happens in her care unless it's something that she wants to have done, and that she understands what we're doing, why we're doing it, and does this even really work for her? What is it that she is looking for? So when you're talking about empowering women, it's almost just taking yourself as the provider out of it and stop making it about you as a provider and make it about her and what it is that she wants and what it is that she needs. I tell my patients all the time, to all of my clients, my job is to give you the best information, the most information that I can, so that you can make the best decision for you and your baby and your body and your family and your life. This is not about me. So as long as you're making decisions that best support you in your life and who you are and what it is that you need, that's all I'm here for. I make sure that they're safe. We talk about safety, what's safe, what's not safe. I'm gonna give you all of the information I have about your care, whether it's labs, ultrasounds, risk factors, history, behavior that I'm seeing now in their care. I'm gonna give you all of this information. This is how this is looking to me. This is what I see. Here's what the recommendations are. What do you think? And it's never about, well, that's, I can't do that. That's not gonna, it's really more of a collaborative sort of relationship with the patient. And so they're in charge. And so, and I tell them in the beginning, this is your responsibility. I'm here to help, and I'm here to guide, and I'm here to counsel and to educate, and I'm gonna watch and make sure that everything stays safe. And if I see something that changes, I'll let you know. But in the meantime, you're in charge. This is your responsibility. This isn't my baby. This isn't my life. This isn't my body.
And so I start off with, what is it that you need and how do I get you there?
Love it, love it. Did you want to say something? Okay.
So for me, it's a little different because most of my patients are coming into a hospital setting. And I think that probably empowering patients before they step into that setting is really important. So we have a lot of discussions about how to advocate for yourself, even phrases and words to use in the hospital. And so we talk about, you know, if you're going to triage because you think you're in labor, and you are being examined and maybe you feel like the person is being too rough, we talk about what you say to that. If you feel like you're being coerced to do something that you really don't want to do, we talk about, you know, the brain acronym, we talk about how to advocate for yourself. And I think that education is so key because when I get moms maybe that come back to my office, they've been to the hospital and they you can kind of almost feel this barrier where they're not as trusting, or it's almost as if they're not as innocent as they were before. You know, it's kind of a weird thing to describe, but I'll say, you know, what happened? Well, you know, they really run to me, they talk to me like very disrespectfully, that kind of thing. So we have to have a conversation about what you do when that happens and how you advocate for yourself, how you say, hey, you know, before you check me, I just really want to remind you to be gentle because last time it was really rough, you know, that kind of thing. And just being able to respectfully and honestly say what your needs are and have those needs met. And then, you know, also telling them that I am your person. So if something happens somewhere at any point or any time, then we need to know, right? My staff knows. So they will call and tell my receptionist, hey, I had a really rough time and this is what happened. And then, you know, it's my job then to advocate and say, hey, you know, this patient came in, this happened with this person, and we need to address that.
My last question before I open it up for some Q&A, and this may not have a definite answer, but a lot of the times when I work with Black mothers and they are pregnant and experiencing heavy antepartum anxiety, and you know, we're talking about the statistics of being 3 times more likely to have mortality. And I often have a conversation of, it's good to be aware of the statistic, but don't own it and let that determine your fate. Being educated, being able to have a team, being able to have all of your support, all these things working in your favor to decrease that and not owning that so you're not already determining what your experience may be. So we've talked a lot about educating our clients. We've talked about, you know, navigating around the barriers in which we have, being able to empower them, being able to bring in the entire family and the support, having them on the same page. What more work do you guys feel needs to be done to make this better? What do you feel needs to change? And I said, and I mean, I'm just putting this out there for an open discussion. But what do you feel we need to do more? I mean, like, we're all here together on this stage, and this is already empowering enough and impactful. We're referring to one another. We're, you know, exchanging each other's information. But what more can be done?
I got the mic. So, for me, I think that, that work started with me, you know, and actually, as a traditionally trained OBGYN, there were things that I was trained to do that maybe weren't the best for the person in front of me. So I think that work started with being changing yourself, and started to look at what you do and why you do what you do, and be open to the patient. I'll never forget Shakana. Where's Shakana? I'm right here, girl. She told me one time, and this is something I never ever forgot. She told me one time that to be your best self with a patient or a client, first you have to open yourself and connect with the person in front of you. And I think that's huge, and that takes a lot of humility to just say, hey, I might not know what's best for your body. You need understand you, because honestly, you know, I went to Morehouse School of Medicine, shout out to Morehouse, and we were always told that the patient will tell you what's wrong with them if you're listening and paying attention. So I think that's a huge thing. And so it starts with each individual practitioner, regardless of what their special role is. But then collaboration just really needs to happen. We need to be able to come to the table with each other, understand what each person is bringing, the value that they're bringing, and then be able to work together to use that value. That's the biggest thing that I see. It makes me so sad that there's like such an adversarial relationship between OBs, and between midwives, between certified professional and community midwives, and, you know, doulas and lactation consultants. You know, I'll see colleagues go, oh gosh, I have a doula. You know, and I'm like, no, right? She has a doula because you know good and well a 15-minute visit is not enough time for you to give that patient adequate education and information and support. And I know I don't have that much time. So yeah, she needs all the support she can get. Oh, she wants to breastfeed. She's calling me about regla and all this jive. No, great. She's informed. She wants to do the best that she can. And so we need to not only get her the prescription, but we need to get her a lactation. You know, like that is how we actually drive change. And then finally, advocacy. We know that women's health is just not a priority in Georgia. It's not a priority in the United States. That's quite clear. But certainly, you know, who we vote for, the policies that we push, the things that we're doing to make sure that, you know, our patients who are living in rural Georgia have access to these things. Most of my patients can't afford to pay a doula or a lactation consultant out of pocket. So that means that these are services that we need to demand from our healthcare system, and that, you know, women, if more than 60% of births in Georgia are covered by Medicaid, then Medicaid should be covering these services.
Right.
And so, you know, we gotta be able to do that.
Amazing points. And to kind of piggyback off of that, having that collaboration, having advocacy is so important. And I think bringing all of the decision making, or a huge part of the decision making, back to the birther is key. Making them the advocate of themselves. One thing that comes from, you know, information, that comes from education. So it's a multifaceted collaboration and a multifaceted idea. But honestly, really just giving that birther the autonomy to make the decisions that's best for them, whatever that is. And I think that's a learned behavior. It's not something that we're taught these days. You know, a lot of women are taught just go in and do what you're told. And so I think bringing back that power is it's almost gonna be like a domino effect. Because once they know they have this power, they're gonna move different. They're gonna speak it. They're going to advocate more for themselves. So how we get there, that's a whole other question. But I think that's probably our key, is bringing that back to them.
Right. It's kind of like what Dr. Baker was saying. Physicians are, or anyone in the medical field, are the experts in the medical field, but the mother is the expert of themselves. And how do we work together to be able to help you get where you want to go?
Yeah, excellent point.
She done took the whole thing apart.
Yes, yeah. I want to say, what you all are sharing is so serendipitous. It almost feels utopian. You know, in essence, it does when you look at how many challenges we've overcome. And so, just coming from a real transparent space, I think it's going to take more midwives. We really want to see this change. I myself am privileged to be able to study and sit at the feet of some grand elder midwives, wrestling powers that just recently transitioned in Metro Atlanta. There aren't as many as there were. My tutelage came alongside them, and one of the things that I would be remiss if I didn't bring it up, that they will often say is that when they sat at the
midwives, as they grew into their midwifery, they would travel around Alabama and Georgia, and they met with some of the last grand midwives before they transitioned. The last one in from Alabama, what is it? Megan, her name, but my bad, rest in power is mama. But they always would brag about how they never lost a baby and they never lost a mama. My mentor, Mama Saran, she read in the archives of Georgia, there were once over 4,000 midwives just serving Georgia alone. Our mortality rate was nothing in comparison to what it is. They rarely ever lost a baby, let alone ever lost a mama. And so until we get back to those type of numbers, where we have a midwife for every community, that's one of the campaigns that we've been pushing, right? Every community deserves a midwife, and they truly does. All of these 4,000 plus, some document as many as 6,000 just in Georgia, and these were predominantly Black women serving rural Black areas, and they were eradicated and eliminated, and now we have this problem. And so I really do think the solution is as simple as pushing legislation, doing some of the things that you just mentioned about trying to change the policies so that we can license home birth midwives again, make education accessible, because that's the greatest barrier for Black women in my experience, is just trying to get to the, have the education, access to the education, because in Georgia, there's not any what we call MEEC accredited schools where you can go and get your CPM. You have to actually leave the state of Georgia if you want to become a certified professional midwife. There aren't very many midwives that look like me. So if you want to train direct entry, whatever model you expect, you decide to accept a pathway, you decide to accept into home birth midwifery, it's going to require you to leave Georgia in most cases, or work with someone that doesn't look like you, which is part of the reason why I never got my CPM, is because I wanted to know how to work with my people. And when I looked around in my community, there were no Black CPMs that looked like me. And there, to this date, there's probably only a handful, if that, in the entire state of Georgia. And so we have to eliminate some of those barriers and make it more accessible for Black women to become scholarships. We need scholarships, we need grants, we need schools. So that's why I say it almost sounds utopian, because we're so in the thick of change right now. We're at the very brink of it. It's happening. These discussions are necessary. And yeah, we'll just close out right there. I think I am.
Just to kind of piggyback off of everything that has already been said, legislation, conversation, and education.
Yeah.
I just thought about that while I was sitting here, because I told Sekesa many times, I have a 7-year-old daughter who, if you ask her today what she wants to be, she's going to tell you she wants to be a midwife, because she is obsessed with watching, and she's like, I want people to have their babies at home and all that type of stuff. And whereas when I was 7 years old, I didn't even know your body made milk, honestly. And I didn't know anything about a midwife. I thought that was just something on TV. So it's just like, the more we have these conversations, we are able to, let people know, okay, yes, we know about the numbers, yes, we know about the statistics, but what can we do to change that?
Yes.
So unless we are having those conversations and putting those things at the forefront, like Sekesa was saying, schools, access to grants and scholarships to make sure that our numbers are higher, and passing legislation to make things that should not be legal. We have so much more to go, but a big part of that is just starting the conversation. And I'm so grateful that the conversation seems to be such a hot button issue right now, so we can just keep bringing it up. And I'm more than grateful for the advent of social media, just normalizing home birth.
Yes.
Because so many people who never would have thought to consider home birth see, hey, I follow midwife so-and-so on Instagram, and when I have a baby, I'm gonna have a baby at home because she makes this look so easy. And if I had it to do all over again, I have 3 children, I would, without a doubt, have them at home. So it's just education, legislation, and conversation.
Yes.
All right.
I don't know what else I can say that hasn't already been said, but, to just sort of add to that, I think that there needs to be, when you're talking about what more needs to be done, I think it kind of starts with like a mindset shift, kind of discussing like what Dr. Baker said, where she had to kind of decide in herself that she was going to be open-minded and think about this from a different perspective. And I don't know how you create a global mindset shift, especially in rural Georgia, but I think it starts like with what you were saying. There just needs to be more conversations about it, and the conversations I think need to be targeted and directed to our younger population, so that people who are coming up into this system are typically the ones that they're going to be the ones running this system in the next 10 to 20 years. And so educating them and meeting them where they are and providing them with the information, I think is going to be it's going to start the mindset shift that we have. And it's great that they're the ones accessing social media the most right now. They're the biggest users of social media. And so making this information public and normal and something that's discussed even in the households. I mean, just to talk about like my girls, they're 6 and 10. They could probably do a sex education class all on their own for their peers at this point. Just because that's what's normal in my house. And so I think you have to sort of get to them where they are, because that's the generation that's going to be coming up. And so I think providing some sort of real sexual or reproductive health education in our school system and to our families that's where your mindset shift is going to happen, is with that younger generation, targeting them. Because otherwise we're just perpetuating the same myths and the same misinformation, and we're just going to keep perpetuating the same broken healthcare system, because that's what's expected and that's what people know. But giving the younger generation the power, I love it when let me tell you, my favorite moms to take care of are my teen moms. My first time moms and my teen moms, I love taking care of them, because they're sponges. They just absorb all of it. And then I know that their children are gonna have better information because I educated her. Not to say that I don't love my multips. I love my multips because they've been there, done that, they know the drill, and they could probably teach the class for me. I tell them, would you like to be a mentor to some of my other people, right? But my young moms, I love them. I love working with them. I love educating them. I love seeing the light bulbs go off in their heads. And so I think if we're going to change this whole generation of what's in our healthcare system now, we have to start young now.
Just to take a few minutes to open it up to Q&A. Does anybody have any questions? Yes. Yeah.
I was wondering how we could better support high-risk mothers who are told from Genesis that they're not to be used, and just especially those who are afraid of hospital settings and they want home birth, but they're like too high risk for that. So how can we provide that? And a lot of them are going to the hospitals and experiencing a cascading event, right? The pain was a regular induction, is a C-section anyway after.
Right. So I think obviously it's provider driven. That is a provider driven model of care, where the provider is saying, end of the story, starting at the beginning, this is the end of the story, this is how it's going to go. And so I think to support that mom, she just needs to have somebody advocating for her, right? So I get those moms that call me and they're like, okay, so I went to the doctor, first visit, not impressed, I got told this, right? And it just felt really disempowered, and I didn't feel like they heard what I had to say. I didn't even feel like I could say what I really wanted, because they just sounded so anti-everything and so negative, and like they're calling me crying, right? They were so negative, and they told me that it was this, and they told me it was that, and I just, it's almost like a shame-based communication, where there's something wrong with you, therefore you're broken, and this is what's going to happen. And so for those moms that I am grateful enough to get a hold of, I start off with, well, what do you really want? And then on top of that, what is it that you really believe? Because I hear that you heard about this, but what is it that you really believe? And that kind of goes back to don't own that statistic. What is it that you really believe? Why do you believe that, right? And educating them. Now, if it truly is that they're high risk, right?
and they need to deliver in a hospital, that's important, right? Because you don't want to just tell them, oh no, you can do whatever, you can do whatever you want. But most of the time, women don't want to tell you you can do whatever you want. They want real information, right? And so explaining to them why this is a risk factor, why this is considered high risk, what could possibly actually happen. What are the statistics? I'm good for going and pulling some statistics and some studies for a mom and pulling it out and handing it to her. Let's go through this together, right? Here's what the risks are. Here's why that's a risk. And as long as you understand that, now you have the information that you need to make a decision for yourself. I always, if I have a mom that's delivered in a hospital that I know of, or is going to the hospital, I send them with a doula. I pay my doulas. It's not covered by Medicaid or insurance, but I do pay them to go and be an advocate for those patients and say, okay, this is her plan. This is what we decided. This is what she wants. And now, we armed her, right? We've had conversations this whole pregnancy and all along the way about this is what the risk is. This is what the risk factors are. This is what you want. This is why you're asking for this, right? And so they have that education, and we've had those conversations. But then putting a person with them. If they truly have to go into the hospital system, put a person with them so that they don't feel like they're alone, right? And they feel like they have the support that they need to be able to speak for themselves. And so many times you can still get an outcome that she feels empowered by and that she feels like she chose just by taking the time to remove yourself as the provider for the helm and put her at the front.
I think that was a great question, because many times we may get folks who are coming in who may have multiple medical comorbidities like diabetes, hypertension, obesity. They've had poor previous outcomes. Maybe they've had blood clots, or they've had stillbirths, or there are lots of things that can make someone a more moderate to higher risk birthing person. And I think that to support those people, number one, like Victoria said, education is key. They need to understand their diagnoses. They need to understand, how that impacts their pregnancy and their birth. And so giving them that empowerment of just understanding what's happening there is really important. And then making them a partner in their own care plan. That is huge, So if I have a mom that has chronic hypertension, we're going to talk about where we want those blood pressures to fall. She's going to get her own blood pressure cuff. She's going to be taking her blood pressure. She's going to understand what the signs and symptoms of preeclampsia are. And then, we have to talk about real risk. Because everybody's running around like with this sense of fear, like, oh my God, you're so high risk, you're so high risk. But then we need to think about what are the actual percentages. So like Victoria said, actually pulling that data and saying, okay, the recommendation for somebody with, say, chronic high blood pressure who's on medication is delivery at 37 weeks, right? That is the recommendation from the American College of OBGYNs. And so I share that information with the mom, and then I say, when we're thinking about real risk here, we're thinking about a couple of things. We're talking about, is the placenta working as good? Do you, what is your actual risk of developing like severe preeclampsia because you have high blood pressure? What other risk factors might you have? We talk about real numbers, like what is the actual instance of stillbirth if you have obesity? Probably, anywhere from 5 to 10% depending on what your BMI is, right? So if my BMI is 45 and I don't want to be induced at 39 weeks, then we need to have a real conversation about what the risks, benefits, alternatives, what is your intuition about what's going to happen, and what happens if we just leave you alone and let you go into labor by yourself. So I think that when people understand that, it's our job to present the information, to present the risk factors, to present the data, and then that mom can decide which, because she grown, what you know. So I just say, you're an adult. I want you to actually understand all the information, and then you say, hey, look, I'm not going to be induced. Or I recently had a mom who searched high and low, who had 2 previous C-sections. And for most OBs, that's like a hard stop, no vaginal delivery. Like that's just too much risk, we're scared of that, we don't want to get sued. But she came to my office and she said, I'm just looking for somebody who will give me a chance. Well, about 35 weeks, she's breech. So she's like, oh God, I came this far. And I said, well, let's try for an external cephalic version. Let's turn the baby And we did, and she had a vaginal birth. So, it was like, you just have to be willing to actually talk to people, listen to people, see where they are, develop a care plan together with the patients, some shared decision making, and then kind of decide. And there's all kinds of things. There's vaginal birth. We really should be promoting vaginal birth because we know a lot of our mortality comes from C-sections. So having lots of time, making sure we have a laborers program at my hospital. I'm very fortunate for that. So we don't see any more of these 5 p.m. C-sections anymore, where it's like, I'm just tired because I was up all night and I worked all day and now I gotta go do something with my kids and all that kind of stuff. You would see stuff like that. People just, I'm just gonna cut it, And we need to get away from that. So having people all the time, around the clock in the hospital has really diminished our C-section rate where I am. And then also, if a mom does need a repeat C-section, even if she chooses a repeat C-section, then making sure that your team is educated and that you know what to do for enhanced recovery after surgery, that pain control is managed well, and that you have that opportunity. You're still gonna do your delayed cord clamping, you're still gonna do your skin to skin, you're still gonna let dad finish off that cord. You're gonna do, you're gonna try to do things that empower that family to have a great experience and a safe experience.
All right, well, thank you guys for participating in this conversation. Thank you for having us. And that's it. It's a wrap.
Just really quickly, I'm nothing but a transparent leader. I appreciate y'all grace with this technology, y'all. And we had one of our presenters tell us that they won't be able to make it. So I'm gonna ask the beautiful panelist and our moderator if you are interested in having more dialogue with them, maybe at the 12:45 block, if you'll provide space to just have conversations with anybody who want to continue the conversation. Are y'all okay with that? Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you all so much and enjoy the rest of the day.